Hello and welcome to another Baldur's Gate 3 build video. In today's video we are continuing our series of the Dark Justiciar theme builds, with today's build being the Sharran Fidelian. Now this build will be primarily a wizard who will be multiclassing a little bit with a rogue for the stealth proficiency. Now, like the rest of the builds in this series, you will be focusing on fighting from the spell Darkness, because we will gain the immunity to blindness from our equipment. And as we level up, at level 8 specifically, we unlock the spell Greater Invisibility, and then when we multiclass into Rogue, we'll be able to reliably continue to remain invisible with Greater Invisibility when attacking with our spells, which is going to grant us a great power boost, as all of our attacks with spells that have attack rolls will be with advantage. But for now, let's get into the character creation. So for your race, you of course, as always, can pick a race of your preference. If you're choosing, it isn't like a make it or break it, but thematically speaking, I think the Drow Elves fit this build or this theme the best. At level 1, you unlock the cantrip Dancing Lights, which can become handy at Act 2, but after that it sort of comes redundant and you can altogether kind of ignore it, since you do already have superior dark vision as a drow, so you won't need to worry about enemies being obscured in obscure areas, so to say. You also get Fey Ancestry at level 1, which is a pretty good racial feature, as it prevents you from being put to sleep, and also you get an advantage of saving throws against being charmed. The draw weapon training doesn't really matter to us, as we will not be using weapons for our damage, but our spells. For the subrace, here is also up to you. Pick your preference, either Lordsworn or Seldarin. It doesn't really matter. I believe there is no big differences, only other than flavor text and some of the dialogue choices. Now for a class, as mentioned before, we're going wizard. We'll be primarily a wizard with only either 2 to 4 levels in rogue, which we'll get into later, to reasons why. For the cantrips, we're going for our first cantrip with Bone Chill. This will be our main damaging cantrip in the early game. Reason being is thematically fits really well, especially if you observe the other Sharran Fidelians in the Act 3. They all use Bone Chill pretty much exclusively. Now, of course, you can choose Fireball instead, but if you're tired of constantly hearing Ignis and you want something else, this is also quite nice for it. For our second cantrip, we are picking Friends. You get advantage on charisma skill checks against non-hostile creatures. This is a very useful cantrip for dialogue choices outside of combat, as you can gain advantage on persuasion, intimidation, etc. But you have to make sure, if you're on tactician or honor mode, you have to make sure that you leave the area before the spell runs out, as if you stay in the area you will lose reputation and it will be considered as if you committed a crime. But otherwise, if you leave the area, it's like nothing happened, pretty much. For our last cantrip, we're going with Light. Reason being, Light can become very useful and handy in the Act 2. After that, it is also becoming kind of redundant, so you can respec and switch it after, like switch it up for something like Mage Hand or Minor Illusion. Of course, you can also do it now, and as you level up, you should be able to gain it later. So this is going to be your choice here. I'm going to start with the light from level 1. For our spells, the first 4 spells are going to be the ones that we will be rolling with at level 1. So the first spell is Mage Armor. It's just a flat increase to armor class. Instead of being 10, we gain 13 plus our dexterity. Our second spell will be Shield. Probably one of the best level 1 spells in the game, as a reaction you can gain up to 5 armor class and you take no damage from magic missiles. And speaking of magic missile, this will be our third spell. This spell is essentially a homing missile that guarantees 2 to 5 force damage on the target it hits. You can also target different targets with this spell. This is an amazing spell for sort of guaranteeing that you kill enemies. Let's say you're fighting enemies and there is one of them with 1 HP or 2 HP. You can use Magic Missile to guarantee you take them out, and then you can focus on some other target. For the fourth spell, we're going to be taking Long Strider. Reason being, this is actually a ritual spell, even though it doesn't say it here. So, ritual spell meaning this spell doesn't cost a spell slot when you cast it, and you can cast it on your entire party, which will give your entire party the increased movement speed of 3 meters, which is very, very useful throughout the entire game. For the other two spells that I would pick at level 1, one of them would be Thunder Wave, a useful spell for pushing enemies away from you, and then Foy as a sort of discounted version of the Darkness spell. For our background, I'm going with the Guild Artisan. Reason being, this is my sort of favorite background. It grants you skills in Insight and Persuasion, which are both useful, and it has a decent amount of triggers for the inspiration. Now, of course, for your role-playing purposes, you can always pick the background you think fits the best. For the ability scores, we're going with 14 Dexterity, 16 Constitution, 17 Intelligence, and 10 Wisdom. 10 Wisdom also you can reduce and put maybe into 10 Charisma if you want. If you don't want a negative in dialogues, but personally I prefer Wisdom, especially Charisma. You can later on get proficiency with it when you use the Illicit Expertise powers. Now, 17 Intelligence is self-explanatory. We're a wizard, we want high intelligence for our spellcasting, high Constitution so we are not like a wet noodle, so that we don't die in one hit, so that we have at least a little bit of more HP, and also it will help us save our concentration saving throws. And Dexterity for additional initiative and also armor class. For skill proficiencies, I'm going with Arcana and Investigation out of the 5 available here. Reason being, Investigation and Arcana I think are the ones most common compared to History, Religion, and Medicine. Alright, let's get into the rest of the levels. So at level 2, we unlock our Wizard subclass, and we'll be choosing Evocation. This will give us the feature called Sculpt Spells. We create pockets of safety within our evocation spells. Allies automatically succeed their saving throws against these spells and they take no damage from them. So to simply put it, if we cast a fireball on ourselves and our allies, if we have this feature, none of us will take damage, only enemies do. So for the spells, now I'll mention this right now so I don't have to repeat myself on and on. So to put it at the beginning, I only have a few spells available here, mainly because I've been learning most of my spells, or a lot of my spells, from the spell scrolls utilizing the wizard class feature that lets you learn spells from scrolls. So I don't have them here, but I would suggest to you to learn Protection from Evil and Good and Tasha's Laughter. Protection from Evil and Good can be very handy in the beginning at the crypt. It also can be useful in Act 2, but you will utilize more powerful spells then. And Tasha's Laughter gets good as you progress through the game, you become more powerful and so on. So it's always a good spell to pick up. So for the sake of the video, I will just pick Enhanced Leap and Expeditious Retreat, so we can continue. Alright, so let me just set up the spells you would have at level 1, because for some reason they got randomized. So for a fifth spell that I would add here as a level up, I would take either Thunder Wave or Fog Cloud. I'm going to take Fog Cloud until we get Darkness. So at level 3, we unlock second level spells. So here I would learn Misty Step, a amazing mobility spell that's a bonus action and is only level 2 spell. And of course our signature spell will be the spell called Darkness. Now as a racial spell we unlock Fairy Fire, which is an evocation spell. So all targets within the light turn visible, attack rolls against them have advantage. Now, this would normally target allies as well, but because we are evocation wizard and because of our feature, Sculpt Spells, this will ignore our allies. They will automatically succeed the check and they will not get this Fairy Fire effect. Alright, so now, for the spells, we're going to remove Fog Cloud. Instead, we're going to replace it with Darkness. And here you can either put Misty Step, although at this point you only have like 2 level 2 spells, so you could maybe put something like Thunder Wave and Misty Step on the next level. So that is what I'm going to do. At level 4 we get another cantrip, so here is where you could choose the light cantrip or if you want Firebolt, but I'm going to take Mage Hand. You also have at least one Mage Hand in your party. Reason for it, for example, in the Act 1 Underdark, in the Forge, there is a gate that can only be accessed from the other side where there's a lever, so you either need to Misty Step behind the gate or send the Mage Hand to do it for you. Now for the spells, we're going to take Scorching Ray. This will be a very powerful and useful spell later on when we unlock Greater Invisibility. And we're going to take the Hold Person, an always great spell to have, kind of a upgraded version of the Tasha's Heinous Laughter, although this one only targets humanoids. Now for the prepared spells, we are now going to prepare Misty Step, so that we have greater mobility, and we get a First Feat. For First Feat, we will take Ability Improvement and we'll put it into 2 Intelligence, so that we have a greater spellcasting DC and attack rolls. And also at level 5, you should, well, usually at level 5 you can defeat Auntie Ethel easily and get her reward, so you get +1 to ability scores. Here I would suggest you to take again Intelligence, so you round this up to 20, so your modifier is +5 instead of a +4. But let's continue on. At level 5 we unlock 3rd level spells, and here I do not have, I believe these spells available, I do not know. So I would suggest picking up Counterspell, obviously, but also either Fireball or Slow. I would pick Slow because I've been playing with Fireball so much, I kind of want to try out different spells, but of course, if you just want arguably the best spell in the game, at least, yeah, in the game, not in general, you can pick up Fireball, but I will just learn Remove Curse so that I have it available in case I don't have scrolls. And then we unlock our racial spell, Darkness. So this will grant us 1 free cast of Darkness per long rest, which is great. We're utilizing this heavily, so 1 free spell cast of that spell is always nice to have. Now because we placed 2 points of Intelligence, we have 2 additional spell slots this time. So here we're going to pick Counterspell, and I'm going to take Slow. Slow is a great spell because at level 3 you can select 6 targets, so the targeting sort of parameter for a level 3 spell is great. So level 3 spell is great, so we're going to go with that. The slow effect essentially just halves their movement, reduces their armor class, and they can't take reactions, and they can only use 1 action or 1 bonus action. At level 6 we unlock the Potent Cantrip. This makes it so essentially if enemies save against our cantrips, they take half damage. They still take half damage, but against Bone Chill this doesn't really work. This only works against, I think, Acid Splash and Poison Spray, so this doesn't really help us all that much. Now for the other 2 spells here, it is your choice what you would pick. I would suggest picking up Haste and maybe something like Fear, or if you haven't picked up Fireball, you should pick up Fireball here. I will be taking Lightning Bolt and let's say Animate Dead. And then for our spell here that I'll pick up, I would suggest you get Scorching Rays here, so you have greater damage if we have advantage. At level 7 we unlock 4th level spells. Now here, very importantly, you want to pick up Greater Invisibility. So this will not be as powerful right now, as it will become very powerful later, but it is still nice to have it because theoretically at this point you will be in Act 2 and you can already get advantage on stealth checks, but we don't have a proficiency in it yet, but we will sort that out later. The second spell I would say you to pick here is the Dimension Door. I do not have it here because I learned it from a scroll, so I will just pick Confusion. And then the spell that we will learn will be Dimension Door, not Greater Invisibility just yet. At level 8 we unlock additional level 4 spells. Now here it's up to you. I would suggest to pick up Fire Shield, which is a quite nice spell, and then you could also maybe get Conjure Minor Elemental if you like using elementals, but I will just pick up these 2. Now for a second how do you call it? I just got a brain fart. Second feat, it's written right here. We'll be picking our last feat, Alert. Like all of the other Dark Justiciar builds, all of them will rely on Alert. Reason being so that we can play first most of the time, and so that we can set up Darkness spell if necessary, or when necessary. Now this is your either last feat now, if you choose to go the route I'm going, which will be 10 levels of Wizard and 2 levels of Rogue, Or you can sacrifice 10th level of wizard and instead go 4 levels rogue, 8 levels wizard, but that is going to significantly reduce your damage output with the magic missile and scorching rays, and I will elaborate that further when we get to level 10 wizard. But at level 9 we'll actually multi-class into rogue so that we can start utilizing great invisibility. So here automatically it usually puts it in sleight of hand, the proficiency. We're instead going to put it into stealth. At level 10 we're going to pick up one more rogue level so that we can get bonus actions, these cunning actions, which will be quite handy. At level 11 we're going to go back to wizard, and here out of the spells you can choose here, you definitely want the Ministry of War spell that you learn from a scroll, the skulls. You can't learn it from like leveling up, but you can learn it from the Wizard's Tower. There are books, when you read them you can get a scroll of that spell, and then you can learn that spell from a scroll. So I'm just going to pick up Elemental, Conjure Elemental, and Dominate Person. From the 5th level spells we will not be using that many of them, though I would highly suggest picking up, like I said, the skulls and then Hold Monster. Hold Monster is a great spell to have. So now for it randomized the spells that are in here for some reason. So let's just set up the spells that I would have equipped, since I don't know why it did that. So Dimension Door, Great Invisibility. I don't think we're missing anything from all ones. Then definitely the Curriculum of Strategy, Artistry of War, Hold Monster, and Fire Shield. Fire Shield is great for popping before a battle, and if you are in darkness and if somebody tries to attack you, or if you're not in darkness, you can hit them back because they take 2d8 fire or 2d8 cold damage. And this should stack with our level 10 wizard feature, which we get right now, which is called Empowered Evocation. Your grasp of invocation spells has tightened, and you can add your intelligence modifier to the damage rolls with any evocation spells. So what this means, at this point we are capable of having 22 intelligence, so our modifier is 6. So we add 6 damage to all of our spells, evocation spells that is. So Magic Missile, Scorching Rays are going to have a ridiculous damage output, and with one of our equipment pieces that's going to be a +2 when we are threatened. But anyway, we unlock a last cantrip. Here is completely up to you. I'm going to pick up Firebolt just so I can ignite surfaces and so on, but yeah, doesn't really matter. And then for the last spells, since we don't have 6th level spells, access to 6th level spells, you can just pick whatever, doesn't really matter. And then for the prepared spells, what you could take here is probably just Conjure Elemental or one of the other evocation spells. Haste is a nice pick if you want it. Also Slow, which we mentioned earlier. So yeah, I would go with Slow. So that is it for the levels and the spells. So in the next section we're going to go into the character build. Alright, so here we are in the equipment section, but before we get into that, I forgot to mention that if you do want to go 4 levels of Rogue to get that 3rd feat, the feat that you want to pick up, I would suggest, is the Dual Wielder. This feat will allow you to dual wield the 2 Act 3 staffs, which give you Arcane Battery and Spell Save DC and attack rolls, or alternatively you can dual wield it with the Rhapsody Dagger, which can give you up to a maximum of +3 spell save DC and attack rolls for every foe you slay. And if I'm not mistaken, you can cheese this by summoning Memphits or any other summon, and then you kill those summons, which is going to give you that +3. I could be wrong here, but I think it works pretty much. I should really test it, but I'm pretty sure it works. It works with other things, like for example, if you spoilers. If you fight Orin and you're marked by Baal, and if it says you need to kill a creature, otherwise you die. If you summon, let's say, Scratch or the Imp, and you kill them, that works. That counts, so you are not marked for death anymore. So it should work with this dagger as well. But anyway, let's get into the equipment. So for our hoodie, we're going with the Hooded Weave. You gain +2 to spell attack rolls and spell save DC. Just a flat out bonus to our spellcasting abilities, always good to have. Alternatively, you can wear the Shade Spell Circlet. You gain +1 to spell save DC under the premise that you are obscured in shadow, so lightly or heavily obscured. Then for the cloak, we're going with the Cloak of the Weave. +1 to spell save DC in attack rolls, and you are able to absorb elements, meaning that if you, let's say, get attacked by a fire attack, you in theory should take only half of the damage if you trigger this effect, and then on the next attack you deal 1d6 of the attack. But this isn't all that important. Main thing is that spell save DC and attack rolls bonus. For the alternatives, we got the Cloak of Protection, always great to have, Armor Class +1, and Saving Throws +1, and then Cloak of Cunning Broom. When the wearer disengages, they also create a foggy cloud with a 2-meter radius that lasts for 1 turn. Since we do have bonus action disengage, we can use this to blind our enemies while we ourselves are immune to the effect. Then for our cloak, we're going with the Viconia's Priestess robe. While obscured, the wearer has advantage on stealth check. This is the main appeal or reason why we're going with this cloak, as we will be pretty much always obscured by either shadow or by darkness, giving us advantage on stealth checks, which is going to have amazing synergy with the greater invisibility. Because as you may know, invisibility breaks when you fail increasingly harder stealth checks on attacks, casting spells, or interacting with items. So this robe plus our rogue levels will give us a rather high chance of succeeding the stealth check and remaining invisible. For the alternatives, in the Act 1 you can get an amazing Infernal robe, which, spoilers, you get if you kill Karlach, and will get it as a reward from Mizora. This robe gives you Fire Shield Warm once per long rest, but it's a bonus action, which makes it much better. Gives you +1 armor class and resistance to fire. Then you can also get the Robe of Exquisite Focus. You gain +1 to spell save DC, or the Protective Sparkswell. Again, +1 to spell save DC, but also if you have a lightning staff, or if you use the Marco Heshkir, you can gain +1 to armor class and saving throws as long as you have lightning charges. And then, of course, Act 3 alternative, you can wear Robe of the Weave. Spell save DC and attack rolls, you regain HP on saving throws and armor class. But then if you use this, you're pretty much a spellcaster and you don't really need to even use stealth because you don't have advantage anymore. And of course, thematically and aesthetically speaking, this fits a Dark Justiciar character which we are building here much better than the standard wizard/sorcerer robe, right? But anyway, continuing on. For our gloves, we're going with the Spellmind gloves. When casting a spell that requires an attack roll, you can take a -5 penalty to the roll, but you gain an additional 1d8 damage. So what this allows us to do, we sacrifice accuracy for more damage. So something like Scorching Rays. Each ray will deal additional 1d8 damage per hit, right? So it nearly doubles the damage possible of the rays. Now, because we are fighting from either greater invisibility always, or we are blinding our enemies with darkness, we will always have advantage on our attacks. What that's going to result in, it will pretty much mitigate the accuracy penalty from these gloves. So you will, like 90% of the time, I would say, have this effect turned on. For the alternatives, you can use the Brace of Defense, +2 armor class when you're not wearing armor or holding a shield. And then the gloves I've been rolling with until I got the Spellman gloves, which are the Daredevil gloves. You gain +1 to spell attack rolls, and also the passive effect, which lets you toggle your spell attacks from being ranged to being melee. So for example, if you toggle the effect on, the Scorching Ray will now be a melee spell, which will not have disadvantage on targets that are right next to you, which is quite handy, especially when you get pushed and you gotta deal damage to someone. Then, for our boots, I went with the Boots of Arcane Bolstering. Each time the wearer dashes, they gain Arcane Charge for 2 turns. While threatened, entity has +2 damage to spell attacks. This is when you have the Arcane Charge, when you gain the Arcane Charge. Now, +2 to spell damage is not much, because if you look at this fireball, it's like what, 10 to 50 damage, not that much. But if you look at something like the Magic Missile, each dart deals 2 to 5 damage, so 2 damage minimum. The boots increase that minimum to 4. But also, if we look at our spellcasting modifier, which is a 6, and we have to remember we are a level 10 wizard, we gain Empowered Evocation. This means that this 2 to 5 damage goes to 8 because of our spellcasting modifier, and because of the boots goes to a 10. So in theory, all of our darts are supposed to deal minimum 10 damage per dart if there is an enemy next to us that is threatening us. This also works with the Scorching Rays, but is not as good on them because you are gonna have disadvantage in aggro. So the Magic Missile is a much better contender here for dealing damage to enemies that are right next to us. For the alternatives, we can of course go with the Disintegrating Nightwalkers, probably the best boots in the game. You can be enwebbed, entangled, and snared, and you can sleep, grease, on ice, and you gain 1 Misty Step per short rest. Or also there are the Evasive Shoes, namely here because of that +1 to armor class, as our armor class would be relatively low if we are not using the Ring of Protection and the Warding Bond. For our amulet, we're going with the Spine Shatter Amulet. When the wearer deals damage with a ranged spell attack, inflict 2 reverberation upon the target. Reverberation is you gain a or the entity affected gains -1 penalty to Strength, Dexterity, Constitution saving throws per turn remaining. So what this is saying, basically, if you have 4 reverberation, this should be a -4. But the second effect is when the entity has 5 or more turns of reverberation, it takes 1d4 thunder damage and possibly falls prone. This second effect is going to be very important to us as we are going to be primarily in the late game using Scorching Rays, which at level 2, which is the lowest cast level of this spell, shoots 3 rays of fire. And if all 3 rays hit, you have a chance to knock any target that you hit on their ass, to knock them prone. Then for the alternatives, you have the Psychic Spark. Shoot an additional dart whenever you cast Magic Missile. A pretty decent amulet, which essentially makes it so that your level 1 Magic Missile, instead of shooting 3 darts, it shoots 4 darts, so making the minimum damage you can do when the enemy is next to you be 40, which is quite decent. Then the other 2 amulets, these 2 amulets, the Pearl of Power amulet and the Spellcrux amulet, are the ones you're supposed to carry on your person at all times. You can just assign them to a hotbar and then use them to restore spell slots, similar how you would use the Arcane Recovery to do the same. Then for our rings, we're going with the Eversight Ring. The wearer cannot be blinded, a signature ring for this build and in this series. Then the Ring of Protection, you gain +1 to armor class and +1 to saving throws. Generally an amazing ring you can get in the Act 1. For our weapons, we're going with the Staff of Spell Power. You gain +1 to spell save DC and attack rolls, and you gain one free spell cast so that you don't expend a spell slot. For the alternatives, in the early game you can use the Melf's First Staff. Spell save DC and attack rolls +1, and you gain 1 cast of Melf's Acid Hour per long rest. Then the alternative is Marco Heshkir, which gives you the same thing, spell attack rolls and DC +1, Arcane Battery, but gives you the Kereska's Favor. I'm probably butchering that. This essentially just imbues you with an element, so let's say fire, acid, lightning, or cold, or even thunder, I believe, and just gives you additional various effects. Now I chose Staff of Spell Power just for the sake of the aesthetics, but you would also be advised to carry both staffs on you at all times and just tag them to the hotbar, and then once you use the Arcane Battery on one staff, switch the staff, and then you have another free spell to use. For our ranged weapons, we're going with the Hellrider Longbow, +3 to initiative rolls and advantage on perception skill checks or ability checks. Fiendish Fire per turn if we hit a creature with the weapon, but we will not be using it anyway. We just want it as a stat stick that gives us +3 initiative. This is going to ensure pretty much that we're always first because we have alert. So combining alert and this, we have a minimum of 8. So we should always play first. The second of the alternatives, you can use the Bow of Awareness, +1 to initiative rolls. This is an Act 1 bow. And the Dark Fire Shortbow, which grants you resistances to fire and cold and gives you 1 cast of haste per long rest. Alright, so that was the equipment. We'll now go into the battle showcase where I will see you there. So here we are again at the Flaming Fist Barracks for another battle showcase. So to start this off, I'm going to show you the interaction that you can have with the boots and our wizard subclass that gets us empowered evocation with the magic missile. So we mentioned earlier that if we are threatened by an enemy, we will have a minimum of 10 damage per magic missile. So for this, just so we have enough movement and actions, I will fly over to next to this fist. Now we are threatened, and so when we use dash, this arcane charge just activates with either a standard action dash or any other bonus action dash. It works with cutting action and so on. So now we are going to cast magic missile. We're going to hit our fist here, who is threatening us with 2 missiles, and we hit this fist on the floor, the annoying wizard, with 2 missiles as well. So now if you can see, we dealt to the wizard that was away from us 9 damage. That's because the boots do not affect enemies that are not threatening you. But if you look at the fist that is next to us, we gain the arcane charges. So enemies that are actually threatening us, that are next to us, they will take a minimum of 10 damage, while the rest of the enemies just take standard damage because they will not take into the game will not take arcane charges into consideration enemies that are not threatening you, only the ones that are right next to you. So now I'm just going to cast darkness and skip turns so that I can show you the effect the visibility has, and generally all concentration spells when you are lethargic, meaning that in theory you should not lose concentration on your spells even though you did become lethargic and incapacitated for a single turn. Now if you look here, the crossbow fist, she did not attack us because he cannot target us through the darkness, but you will see that the fists that have javelins, they will actually throw them at us, even though in theory you would think that they shouldn't be able to do it because they're using a ranged attack. But regardless, we're just going to wait for them to finish their turns. Shouldn't take too long, there's only 4 left. And they will, of course, throw their javelins. Of course, this is generally how your fights would look like. You would sit in darkness, causing disadvantage on your enemies, while you gain advantage because you are immune to the effects of it. So you essentially just completely neutralize enemy ranged units from being effective. Alright, so now we're going to cast Virtual Invisibility on ourselves. Now just to show you, we're going to step outside. The accuracy and the damage you can expect with Spell Might active and while invisible. So if you look here, we have 99% chance of hitting all of these characters with Spell Might active. So let's cast a 5th level Scorching Rays on the Blaze Liara Portier. Let's see if we did not take her out, but we took out what, 100 of her HP, and she did get knocked on her ass due to reverberation. And if you look at the damage, it's 2d6, so minimum 2 plus 1d8 from the gloves, that's 3, and then intelligent over 6. So we deal minimum 9 damage with the Scorching Rays, and we have amazing accuracy. Now, if we drink a potion of speed, we should get lethargic, but we did not break invisibility. We are still invisible, and we will be invisible next turn, continuing our effectiveness or fighting effectiveness from the invisibility. Now I should check, just give me one moment, the stealth roll. There we go. So difficulty class was 15, but we gain advantage from our cloak or from our robes. We gain 8 from proficiency, that's why we took 2 levels of rogue, and we gain +2 from dexterity, so minimum is 10. And with advantage, on average, you will succeed this almost every time, depending on how high the roll gets. But usually it won't get to ridiculous high, because before that does happen, you will most likely end any fight that does occur. Alright, so there you go. That was the battle showcase. That was the build. I hope you enjoyed. I would appreciate it if you like and subscribe for more Baldur's Gate 3 content. And I'll see you in the next one.